Forward operating base. Falcon had been peaceful for exactly 5 hours when the first rocket turned the fuel depot into an inferno that lit up the Iraqi night like daylight. Staff Sergeant Zara Hayes was checking an IV line on a recovering Ranger when the explosion shattered every window, and in the 4 hours of hell that followed, 28 soldiers discovered their invisible night nurse wasn't who they thought she was. She'd been filing paperwork for 2 weeks while real operators did real work. Then, mortars started falling at 0300 hours. Militants breached from 3 sides, and she grabbed a rifle with one hand and a medkit with the other. What happened next became a legend that special operations personnel still whisper about. Drop a comment and hit subscribe, because this proves the quietest person in the room is sometimes the most dangerous. The CH-47 Chinook touched down at Forward Operating Base Falcon in western Iraq, rotors churning desert air into choking clouds. The compound sat near the Syrian border, all blast walls and hardened structures arranged in defensive rings. Guard towers punctuated the perimeter every 50 meters. The whole place radiated the aggressive functionality of American military presence in hostile territory. Zara Hayes stepped into heat that felt like walking into fire. 27 years old, average height with dark hair pulled into a regulation bun. She wore desert camo that somehow made her fade into the background. What stood out, if anyone looked, were her hands moving with constant precision, checking gear with unconscious efficiency that spoke of deeper programming. Staff Sergeant Marcus Rivera barely glanced up at the processing station. Hayes, Zara, Staff Sergeant, 68 Whiskey, Night Shift Medical, Barracks Echo, Rack 12. Medical facility is the concrete building at Compound Center. Chief Thompson runs it, briefing at 1900. Don't be late. He slid an access card across the desk. Welcome to Falcon. Try not to get blown up your first week. The barracks smelled like every deployed facility, industrial cleaner fighting sweat and recycled air. Zara found her rack in a corner, offering sightlines to both exits, back against a reinforced wall. The choice was automatic, driven by instincts from places where sleeping arrangements determined survival. She unpacked with methodical precision, uniforms folded exactly, gear positioned for instant access, medical texts within reach. The one photo showed her in different fatigues with 4 other people whose faces had been digitally obscured, leaving her alone. Forward Operating Base. Falcon's medical facility occupied a hardened structure built to survive indirect fire. Thick concrete walls surrounded treatment areas with modern equipment. Inside, medics moved between stations preparing for casualties that might arrive in minutes or days. The air carried competing scents: antiseptic, strong coffee, and metallic tension. Chief Warrant Officer Daniel Thompson was 40, with a face that had seen too much trauma. 15 years in combat medicine across 3 countries. When Zara reported, he actually looked at her with full attention. Hayes night shift, 1900 to 0700, patient monitoring, meds, wound care, documentation. Standard procedures unless we get casualties, then you assist and stay clear unless directed. His voice carried the roughness of someone who'd shouted over explosions too many times. Understood, Chief. Good. He handed her a tablet with patient files. Most overnight patients are post-op or waiting for transport to Germany. Keep them stable, escalate anything that changes. He studied her. You have deployment experience? Some rotations, Chief. Previous assignments included field medical support. She kept it vague. Fair enough. Welcome to Falcon. Night shift's usually quiet. You'll watch monitors and drink bad coffee. He had no idea how wrong he was. The truth would arrive in 2 weeks. The routine set in fast. Zara worked 12-hour shifts moving through dim treatment areas like a shadow, checking vitals and changing dressings with quiet competence. Her patients were mostly soldiers recovering from classified operations, plus contractors and local interpreters wounded helping Americans. She learned names, memorized schedules, maintained professional distance that made her invisible. The day shift ran with confident swagger. Staff Sergeant Luis Martinez led the combat medics with aggressive competence from proven experience. He'd earned his reputation in Mosul, had stories about field surgery in collapsed buildings. He made sure everyone heard those stories. Specialist Nicole Foster was his protégé, 25 with 3 deployments and an attitude suggesting she'd invented trauma medicine. She had real skills backing the confidence. Corporal Ryan Mitchell rounded out the team, quieter but equally dismissive of night shift. He'd done Afghanistan before Iraq, had enough trauma experience to earn respect. They treated Zara with casual dismissal. Night shift was where medics went when they couldn't handle real medicine. The disregard permeated every interaction. During one shift change, Martinez didn't lower his voice. Night shift must be easy. Getting combat pay for babysitting sleeping patients while actual medics handle real work. Foster added her contribution. I heard she came from some stateside hospital. Probably never seen a real trauma case outside training. Mitchell kept quiet but didn't contradict them. The message was clear. Day shift handled critical work, night shift was glorified sitting. Zara continued her charting without reaction. She'd heard this for 2 weeks. The word slid off because she'd learned that people who talked most about capabilities rarely delivered when situations turned critical. But Chief Thompson noticed things others missed. He'd been watching his night shift nurse with growing curiosity. The way she moved showed awareness beyond standard training, how she positioned herself during patient care, always facing doors, back, never to open spaces. One evening, he found her reorganizing trauma kits with modifications that weren't standard protocol. Tourniquet placement for one-handed deployment, hemostatic gauze packed for low-visibility use, configuration allowing someone to grab supplies without looking in a firefight. Thompson had seen that arrangement once in a classified briefing about special operations medical capabilities. Interesting setup, he commented neutrally. Zara's hands paused briefly. Just optimizing efficiency, Chief. That's not standard configuration. That's specialized tactical medical. Where'd you learn that? She met his gaze with eyes revealing nothing. Previous assignment had unique requirements, Chief. Some habits stick. Thompson let it drop, but filed the observation. Everyone here carried secrets. Most just hid them better. The intelligence brief arrived Wednesday morning with casual delivery suggesting nobody believed it. Enemy activity had increased significantly. Drone surveillance showing unusual persistence, communications intercepts suggesting coordinated planning, local informants going silent in patterns indicating systematic intimidation. The analysts included standard recommendations about enhanced security and increased vigilance. Checkbox items everyone acknowledged without internalizing, because Forward Operating Base Falcon had been secure since establishment. Base Commander Colonel Jennifer Marshall reviewed the assessment at staff meeting. Elevated threat environment, possible coordinated action, recommend enhanced perimeter security. She looked around at faces showing concern and boredom. Standard precautions, stay alert, follow protocols. Questions? Nobody had questions. They'd received similar warnings monthly. Nothing had materialized beyond occasional distant fire or rare IED discoveries. Falcon felt secure. Zara heard about the brief third hand, reading the summary on the bulletin board. Her reaction differed completely. She spent extra time during rounds that night, studying the compound with tactical eyes, identifying cover positions, noting which structures were reinforced versus prefab, calculating distances to defensive positions and evacuation routes. Just mental exercises, she told herself, professional habits from that previous career. But survival skills didn't fade because paperwork changed. The assault began at 03:15 hours under moonless sky when the compound was at minimum manning. The first rocket hit the fuel depot, detonating with massive explosion that lit the night like daylight. The blast triggered every alarm. Before anyone processed the first impact, 5 more rockets followed rapidly, walking destruction across the compound with precision, suggesting detailed reconnaissance. This wasn't random harassment. This was coordinated assault by fighters who knew exactly what they were doing. Zara was checking a Ranger's post-surgical drain when the first rocket hit. Lights flickered, died, emergency power kicked in with a diesel groan. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red. Her reaction was immediate. Drop the chart, move to observation, assess the situation. Muscle memory took control. Outside, the compound erupted into controlled chaos. Personnel poured from barracks, sprinting toward fighting positions while leaders shouted orders. Another rocket impacted near the command center, close enough to shake the medical facility. Then, mortars started. Not random harassment, but precisely targeted indirect fire from multiple positions simultaneously. The enemy had studied American defenses, identified key structures, and was systematically destroying capabilities before the ground assault everyone realized was coming. Chief Thompson burst into the ward, already issuing orders. Hayes, evacuate ambulatory patients to the hardened shelter now. Anyone who can walk moves immediately. If they can't walk, we carry them. We've got casualties incoming, and this facility is about to become critical terrain. The ward held 12 patients. Zara moved through them with systematic efficiency, assessing mobility and prioritizing evacuation. The Ranger was ambulatory despite surgery. 2 Marines with extremity wounds could manage with assistance. 3 more could walk with support. That left 6 requiring litter carries, including 2 on life support needing uninterrupted power. She was coordinating evacuation when Martinez and his team arrived, summoned by the attack. They entered hard, adrenaline pumping, ready for mass casualties. Martinez immediately started directing, taking command from Thompson, organizing trauma bays. Hayes, he snapped, seeing Zara mid-evacuation, get out of the way and let trained personnel handle this. She didn't have time for ego, currently evacuating non-critical patients to hardened shelter per Chief Thompson's orders. Ambulatory moving now. Litter urgent, require 2-person teams. I don't need status from night shift. Martinez's face flushed. I need this space cleared for real casualties. Move your patients, then stay in the shelter where you won't interfere. Another explosion shook the building, close enough to crack windows and send glass across empty beds. Small arms fire followed immediately. The enemy had breached the outer perimeter, pushing toward the medical facility. Thompson tried intervening, but Martinez was already past him, directing Foster and Mitchell to prepare receiving areas, while ignoring they still had 12 vulnerable patients scattered through a facility taking fire. Zara made a command decision. She grabbed the nearest gurney and moved to a life support patient, a young Ranger who'd taken chest trauma 3 days prior. His ventilator kept him alive with mechanical precision that would fail if power was interrupted. Can't move him without ventilation, Corpsman James Carter said, hovering protectively. Battery backup gives us 75 minutes, Zara replied, her hands already disconnecting tubes with practiced confidence. We transfer now, reconnect in the shelter with generator power. You manage the ventilator, I'll handle IV lines. Stay low, move fast. Carter looked at her with surprise. Most personnel treated complex life support like it was radioactive, but Zara's hands moved with absolute confidence, someone who'd done this under worse conditions. They moved as a coordinated team, keeping the patient stable while navigating through a ward becoming a combat zone. Glass crunched under wheels, smoke filtered through compromised seals, gunfire grew louder, closer. By the time they reached the hardened shelter, Zara had transferred 3 critical patients with Carter and another corpsman who'd taken cues from her systematic approach rather than Martinez's frantic directions. The hardened shelter was built to withstand everything short of direct artillery hits. Reinforced concrete walls surrounded a space with dedicated generators. It wasn't large enough for surgery, but could maintain patients until the situation stabilized. Zara was reconnecting the ventilator when Thompson found her. Outstanding work, he said simply, because there wasn't time for praise when casualties were arriving. The wounded started flowing through within minutes. A sergeant with arterial thigh bleeding, tourniquet probably saving his life. A lieutenant with torso shrapnel, multiple penetrating wounds possibly compromising organs. A specialist whose arm barely attached, held together by field dressings. Martinez's team fell into practiced rhythm, coordinated efficiency from training and experience. They were genuinely good at trauma medicine, Zara acknowledged objectively. They understood protocols, knew how to prioritize, delivered care keeping people alive. But they were operating in a facility still taking fire, with suboptimal positioning under conditions requiring more than clinical knowledge. Another explosion outside, followed by sustained automatic fire very close. A runner burst through the entrance, blood streaming from fragment wounds, shouting that the enemy had penetrated the inner perimeter and was targeting the medical facility. They were trying to collapse American medical capability. Thompson made his assessment in seconds. We can't hold if they breach. We need to consolidate patients, prepare for facility defense, and ready for evacuation if this location becomes untenable. Martinez's response was immediate denial. We can't move these patients. They're mid-procedure, unstable, some won't survive transport. We hold and wait for security to push them back. And if security can't push them back? Thompson's question hung in smoke-filled air. If they breach and we have patients scattered with no defensive preparation? That was when main power failed completely. Not a flicker, but total blackout, as something critical suffered catastrophic failure. Emergency lighting lasted 15 seconds before those batteries died, plunging everything into darkness, broken only by red exit signs and scattered tactical lights. In that darkness, Zara Hayes stopped hiding. She'd spent 2 weeks being invisible, 2 weeks letting people dismiss her. But the mathematics had become brutally simple. Patients would die if someone didn't act, and the confident combat medics had no idea how to defend a medical facility under assault. But Zara knew exactly how. Because before she'd been a night shift nurse, she'd been someone else entirely. Someone who'd spent years operating where treating casualties and defending positions were the same job. Someone who'd learned combat medicine from desperate reality where patients died if you made mistakes, and you died if you couldn't fight. She moved through the dark ward with absolute confidence, her hands finding the security locker by memory and extracting items that weren't standard medical equipment. The M4 carbine medical facilities kept for defensive emergencies, but most staff never fired outside qualification. 4 loaded magazines, a tactical vest with plate carriers, everything she'd hoped she'd never need again. Thompson saw her in dim lighting, recognized what she was doing, felt puzzle pieces clicking into place. Hayes, what are you doing? She checked the rifle with practiced efficiency. Chamber clear, magazine seated, safety on, weapon ready. Making sure our patients survive, Chief. Someone needs to establish defensive positions. Your combat medics know trauma medicine, but not tactical facility defense. And you do? Zara looked at him with steady eyes, and for the first time in 2 weeks, she let him see what she'd been concealing. Yes, Chief. I really do. Before he could respond, automatic weapons fire shattered the main entrance. The enemy was at the perimeter, and the medical facility had just become ground zero. The transformation was immediate and absolute. 1 second, Zara Hayes was the quiet night nurse. The next, she was someone Thompson barely recognized, moving with lethal purpose toward defensive positions while maintaining awareness of patient locations. Martinez saw her and panic crossed his face. What the hell, Hayes? Put that weapon down. You're a nurse, not infantry. Get back to the shelter. She ignored him completely, attention focused on the tactical situation outside. Through shattered windows, muzzle flashes marked enemy positions, advancing with professional coordination. Hayes! Martinez's voice climbed an octave. That's a direct order. Put down the weapon. Zara's response was conversational. Sergeant Martinez, in approximately 30 seconds, armed hostiles are going to attempt entry. You have 2 choices. Argue about chain of command, or get your patients into the shelter and let me do what I was trained to do. Decide fast. Another explosion rocked the facility. Someone screamed. Thompson made the decision. Martinez, get your team and patients into the shelter now. Hayes, you have defensive overwatch. Keep them off us while we consolidate. Chief, that's insane, Martinez started, but Thompson cut him off. That's an order. Move now or I'll have you removed. 3 seconds. Martinez looked between them, seeing something that penetrated his ego. He turned and started barking orders. Zara used the time to establish proper defensive positions. She moved equipment to create firing lanes covering the main entrance and windows, positioned trauma supplies within reach, because she knew she'd be treating casualties between engagements. Verified magazines were seated and spare ammunition was accessible. Every movement was economical, practiced, muscle memory from thousands of repetitions. The enemy hit 30 seconds later, exactly as predicted. The main entrance took sustained fire from a PKM machine gun, heavy rounds chewing through the door. 2 fighters breached immediately after, flowing through with weapons ready. They never saw Zara in her position. Her first controlled pair caught the lead fighter center mass, dropping him in the doorway. The second fighter had a moment to register someone was shooting back before her next shots found him. Both went down, their bodies creating an obstacle for the next wave. Outside, shouting in Arabic directed fighters to find another entry. Zara tracked the voices, building a mental picture. At least 8 more fighters outside, possibly more in reserve. They'd expected an undefended facility. Finding someone who could shoot had disrupted their timeline. The respite lasted 20 seconds. Then, automatic fire poured through multiple windows simultaneously, suppressive fire while assault elements maneuvered. Zara went low, letting bullets snap overhead while calculating firing solutions. A fighter appeared at the western window, climbing through with his AK-47. Zara dropped him with 2 shots before his boots touched floor. Another tried from a different angle, throwing a flashbang before entering. The device detonated with crack and white light, but Zara had heard the metallic clink and turned away, closing her eyes to protect night vision. When the flashbang cooked off, she was moving to a new position. The fighter came through expecting a stunned target. Instead, he found Zara at an unexpected angle with her rifle on target. He went down without firing. The attack faltered. Enemy fighters pulled back, regrouping. They'd lost 4 men in 90 seconds to someone fighting like a professional operator. The shouting outside grew more animated. Heated discussion between leadership and subordinates, less enthusiastic. Zara used the lull to check ammunition. 2 magazines expended, 2 remaining plus a partial. Not enough for sustained engagement. She needed to change the tactical equation. Thompson crawled toward her position. "Hayes, what the hell are you?" She topped off her partial magazine. "Someone who knows how to do this, Chief. Can we discuss my personnel file later?" "Fair point. We've got everyone secured except 2 critical patients who can't be moved. If we evacuate, those 2 die. Then we hold." Zara scanned the ward. "How many security personnel can reinforce?" Thompson's expression answered before words. "Security is stretched across the perimeter. They're taking casualties and running low on ammunition. We're not getting reinforcements." Outside, the enemy resumed with renewed intensity, attacking from multiple angles. Zara transitioned between targets with fluid efficiency. A fighter flanking through the northern window went down to controlled pairs. Another attempting the main entrance took rounds, sending him stumbling back. But she was one person against an organized force, and mathematics were working against her. Ammunition depleting faster than sustainable. The enemy was learning her patterns, adapting. That's when Martinez did something unexpected. He emerged from the shelter with his sidearm. "Hayes," he called, voice showing scared determination. "I can cover the east side if you tell me what to do. East windows. Don't try to hit anything specific. Just put rounds downrange when targets appear." Foster and Mitchell followed, moving into positions with their weapons. They were scared, but stepping up. Carter appeared next to Zara with an M4. "Former infantry before medical," he explained. The fight intensified. Zara coordinated their defensive fire, calling out targets and sectors, creating overlapping fields, forcing the enemy to work for every meter. It wasn't pretty, but it made the assault costly. Enemy leadership was having urgent discussions. This facility was supposed to be easy. Instead, it had become a meat grinder. They chose to continue, but shifted to indirect fire. The first RPG hit high, punching through the roof and detonating in the ceiling. The explosion rained debris and started fires. The second hit lower, opening a hole compromising structural integrity. Zara saw where this was heading. They couldn't breach through direct assault, so they'd destroy it from standoff distance. "Chief, we need to evacuate everyone now. This building is coming down." Thompson understood. He started organizing evacuation, But logistics were nightmarish. 2 critical patients who couldn't move easily, a dozen ambulatory wounded needing assistance, all under fire through a facility being destroyed. The only route was through the eastern emergency exit, opening onto 50 meters of open ground between the facility and command center. Normally suicide, but staying was guaranteed death. Zara made a decision that would have gotten her court-martialed. She'd been defensive this entire engagement. That approach had worked to a point, but now the situation demanded offense. She turned to Carter. "Can you hold this position for 90 seconds without me?" He looked at her like she'd suggested flying. "Hold it alone?" "Hayes, I'm good, but not that good. You won't be alone." She gestured to Martinez, Foster, and Mitchell. "You direct their fire. Keep the enemy focused here. Make them think we're still defending in place." Carter processed this, arrived at her conclusion. "What are you going to do?" Zara checked her remaining ammunition. 2 magazines plus a partial, maybe 55 rounds. "I'm going to give them something else to worry about. Keep them busy for 90 seconds, then start evacuation. Use smoke, move fast, get everyone to the command center. I'll cover withdrawal." "Hayes, that's suicide." Martinez had moved close enough to hear. "You'll be outnumbered, outgunned, operating alone. You'll be dead before you get 20 meters. She looked at him with an expression almost gentle. "Probably. But if I don't go, we're all dead when the next RPG brings down the roof. Sometimes mathematics are terrible, and you pick the option where fewer people die." Before anyone could argue, she moved. The eastern emergency exit opened with metallic clunk, and Zara flowed into the night, immediately angling toward enemy positions that hadn't expected anyone to go offensive. She moved through darkness with practiced efficiency, using terrain and cover to mask approach. Enemy fighters were focused on the facility. They didn't expect someone flanking their positions becoming the threat. Zara's first target was an RPG team setting up for another shot. 2 fighters, one with launcher and one with spare rockets, positioned behind concrete about 40 meters from the building. They never saw her approach from their blind side, never heard suppressed cracks of her rifle until both were down and the RPG inoperative. She kept moving, transitioning before anyone could react. Her next engagement was a machine gun team providing covering fire. The gunner was so focused he didn't register the threat behind him until Zara's rounds found him. His assistant tried to swing the weapon around, but she'd already adjusted aim, and he went down next to the unmanned gun. The assault began to fracture. Fighters advancing toward the facility suddenly took fire from unexpected angles. Command and control broke down as squad leaders tried to figure out what was happening. The confusion bought precious seconds. Zara used those seconds to create more chaos. She engaged targets of opportunity, never staying in one position long enough for accurate return fire, constantly moving and forcing the enemy to react. It wasn't sustainable. Eventually they'd get organized. Eventually they'd concentrate force. Eventually her ammunition would run out. But she didn't need to sustain indefinitely. She just needed to buy time for evacuation. Back at the facility, Carter understood what Zara was doing and felt awe mixed with horror. She was sacrificing herself to give them a chance. "Start evacuation now," Carter ordered. "Use smoke grenades, move in pairs, get to the command center. I'll provide covering fire." Martinez started to object, realized he had no better ideas, began organizing withdrawal. Foster and Mitchell helped patients toward the exit. Thompson directed movement with systematic efficiency. Outside, Zara had run her last magazine down to final rounds. She'd disrupted the assault, bought time for evacuation, created enough chaos. But now she was out of options, pinned behind cover being systematically destroyed. A fighter appeared to her left, AK-47 already tracking toward her. Zara's rifle clicked empty, no time to reload, no time to transition. She threw herself at him, closing distance before he could fire, fighting with desperate intensity. They went down in a tangle. The fighter was bigger, stronger, but Zara fought with technical precision, carved by years of training and desperation. She used his strength against him, redirected attacks, struck vulnerable points. The fight ended when her knife found the gap between his armor plates. She rolled away, retrieved his AK-47, checked the magazine. Half full, maybe 15 rounds. That was when she heard the helicopters. Not Blackhawks, but the deeper thump of Apaches, gunships inbound with firepower that would turn the tactical situation completely. Someone at command had finally gotten air support, and enemy fighters knew what gunships meant. The assault broke completely. Fighters began withdrawing toward exfiltration routes. The Apaches arrived seconds later, thermal optics identifying enemy positions and engaging with 30mm chain guns. Zara stayed low, identifying herself with IR strobes. The gunships worked over enemy positions with methodical efficiency. The base perimeter began to stabilize. The medical facility smoldered behind Zara, damaged but standing. She made her way back slowly. Carter met her at the emergency exit with an expression suggesting he was seeing someone completely different. "Everyone made it out," he said simply. "All patients, all staff, because of what you did." Zara nodded, too tired for words. The rifle hung loose and she had to concentrate to remember to engage the safety. Chief Thompson appeared next, and behind him came Martinez, Foster, Mitchell, and the rest of the staff. They looked at her with expressions ranging from shock to respect to something approaching fear. This wasn't the person they'd dismissed. This was someone who'd just fought off an organized assault basically alone. Base Commander Colonel Marshall showed up 30 minutes later. "Staff Sergeant Hayes," she said carefully, "I think we need to have a conversation about your background." Zara set down the AK-47 and straightened. "Yes, ma'am. That would probably be appropriate." The debriefing happened in the command center. Colonel Marshall sat across from Zara with Chief Thompson present while intelligence officers took notes. "Your file says standard combat medic training, various rotations, nothing unusual," Marshall began. "Certainly nothing explaining what happened tonight." Before Zara could answer, the door opened. A man in civilian clothes entered. "Robert Chen, Defense Intelligence Agency. I've been authorized to provide context regarding Staff Sergeant Hayes' background." Marshall looked between them. "She's one of yours." "Not anymore." Chen took a seat, but she was, for 6 years, embedded with special operations providing combat medical support in locations that don't appear on maps. She did 163 missions with a casualty survival rate that made her a legend. Thompson leaned forward. 163 missions. Chen smiled thinly. "Hayes is one of maybe 15 people who went through a program combining advanced combat medicine with Tier 1 tactical training. The program doesn't officially exist. They're the medics we send when the mission is too dangerous for regular combat medics." Zara sat quietly while her history was explained. "The question," Marshall said, "is why someone with that background was working night shift while hiding their capabilities." "Transition program," Chen explained. "Operators eventually need to rotate into conventional forces." Hayes volunteered. The terms were that she'd work a standard deployment and not advertise her background unless absolutely necessary. "And tonight was absolutely necessary," Thompson said. Chen nodded. "Which is why I'm here to ensure no negative fallout. What Hayes did falls under combat operations to preserve American lives. No regulations violated." Marshall considered this. "I'm not disciplining someone who saved 28 lives, but I can't ignore that I have an operator with advanced capabilities who's been hiding in plain sight. What happens now? That's up to Hayes." Chen turned to Zara. "You fulfilled your transition terms. You could request reassignment to your old unit or stay here and finish your deployment." "I'd like to stay," she said quietly. "Finish the deployment, keep working medical, teach people here what I know so maybe next time they don't need someone like me." Chen nodded slowly. "Then I'll file the paperwork. You remain assigned as a staff sergeant with standard medical specialization. What happened tonight gets classified. The people here know what you did, but outside this base, you're still just another medic." After he left, Marshall spoke. "I'm putting you in for a commendation, Hayes." "Thank you, ma'am. But I'd rather you recognize the people who stood up and fought, despite being scared and untrained. Martinez, Foster, Mitchell, Carter. They made the real difference." The next morning, Zara returned to the medical facility. The main ward was damaged, but Thompson had set up temporary treatment spaces. Martinez found her supervising equipment movement. "Hayes," he started, then stopped. I was wrong about you. Completely. I'm sorry, and if there's anything I can do, name it. She looked at him steadily. You can start by treating everyone in this unit with respect, regardless of shift. Night shift nurses aren't invisible. They're professionals doing essential work. Fair point. Martinez smiled ruefully. Also, would you be willing to run tactical medicine training for those of us who apparently don't know anything about operating under fire? That, Zara said, I can do. Over following weeks, forward operating base Falcon returned to normal, though normal had been redefined. The facility got rebuilt with improved defenses. Training programs were established teaching tactical medicine under fire. Zara continued working night shift, but the way people treated her had changed completely. Soldiers nodded with genuine respect. Combat medics sought her guidance. Even the commander acknowledged her. They started calling her Doc, the title for medics who'd earned their place. Some special operations personnel called her Nightingale 6. Carter became close to a friend. They worked night shift together, maintaining routine while occasionally discussing tactical considerations. Thompson used her expertise to overhaul defensive preparations. She taught classes on tactical medicine. Martinez transformed from antagonist to protege. His arrogance got tempered by genuine humility. Foster and Mitchell followed similar paths, their dismissal evolving into understanding that every role mattered. The transformation rippled outward. Soldiers started seeing support staff differently. That quiet nurse might have capabilities you'd never suspect. 2 months later, Thompson offered her a position training combat medics at Fort Sam Houston. That's generous, Chief, but I don't know if I'm the right person. Thompson smiled. I'm asking you to take everything you learned and use it to make sure other medics survive. You've operated at the highest levels. Now make sure people who come after you are better prepared. I'd need to clear it with some people, she said finally. Take your time, but know the offer stands. What you did here matters, Hayes. After leaving his office, Zara walked through the rebuilt facility. She saw medics using techniques she'd taught them. Carter caught up with her outside, heard about the offer. You gonna take it? Maybe. Seems like a waste not to share what I've been through. I think you should. What you taught us made a real difference. They watched the sunset paint the desert orange and purple. One more thing, Carter said. Whatever you decide, just know that what happened here mattered. You changed how we think about what's possible. That's worth something. Zara nodded. She'd spent 2 weeks trying to be invisible. But maybe that person wasn't something to leave behind. Maybe it was something to integrate and use to make things better. The night shift started at 1900 hours. Zara made her rounds with systematic efficiency. But now when she moved through the ward, people saw her, really saw her. Martinez was working late. He nodded with genuine respect. Foster and Mitchell were prepping trauma bays. Thompson was drafting curriculum proposals, all traceable back to one night when a quiet nurse had stopped hiding and reminded everyone that appearances deceive, that the most dangerous people are often the ones you'd never suspect, and that sometimes the person who looks like they don't belong is exactly who you need. Zara finished her rounds and settled into routine, watching patients heal. Outside, the base continued operations, and in the medical facility, a night shift nurse worked with the same professionalism, helping people heal while carrying knowledge that if things went sideways again, she could do what needed to be done. The wolf doesn't announce itself to the sheep, but it never forgets what it is. Even when wearing a nurse's uniform and working night shift at a base in Iraq, surrounded by people who think they know exactly who you are, right up until the moment you show them they were wrong about everything. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to hear more powerful stories of brave women in uniform.